Hello. Today's video is on the principle of moderation, or as the Buddha called it, the middle way. There's always one extreme and another extreme, doing too little and doing too much. The optimal behavior that leads to the most success in life, for example, or to the most success in whatever you try to achieve, usually lies in the middle, in the continuous middle between those two extremes, and not with the two extremes. And as always, I like to start with a small comic or meme. And I find this one extremely well fitting, as doctors and people that want good things for you to happen usually prescribe moderation, while the people that get prescribed moderation and are maybe addicted to drugs or Netflix or internet pornography or whatever, typically react the way SpongeBob reacts in the second panel. They totally deny that they have a problem and that they should maybe switch to a more moderate approach to be more successful in life. Okay, but let's now come to the actual content of the video. So first of all, people typically idealize things they just learned. The most recent thing is usually the most important thing, as it's new and shiny and whatnot. And people typically have the tendency to simplify the world into the two categories, good or bad. They leave out the entire interval in the middle. There is always a continuous interval between good and bad. They leave it out. And this oversimplification tendency leads to a lot of trouble usually. People that oversimplify can look back at a history of being wrong all the time. And quite literally, there is no reason to assume that they got it right this time. If you are perfectly honest with yourself and think back about your past, how often have you been right? The answer is most likely that you can look back on a history of failure and always being wrong. You always learn something new that invalidates your previous knowledge, and there's no reason to assume that you got it right this time if you apply the same black and white thinking principle to everything new you discover. It is not perfect. It is not the worst thing in the world. It is somewhere in between. So let's now get to some examples. And the best example, in my opinion, is eating. There are many people, for example in the Western world, that eat lots of sugar and sugary food like bakery items, sweets, lollipops, whatever, and they soon develop an addiction and maybe get, as a side effect, things like caries and get overweight or even obese or morbidly obese even, which isn't too uncommon. And since they experienced something bad from the sugar, they go from absolute disliking and glorifying the tasty sugar to fully disliking it and even demonizing it. Sugar turns from something awesome into the most horrible thing in the entire world. They go from one extreme to the other extreme. In reality, sugar is neither good nor bad. It's just some other form of energy that humans can use to function. It's not the most perfect thing in the world, it's not the worst thing in the world. There are problems with sugar, that is very clear. If you are over-consuming all the time and eat lots of sugar while doing it, you will develop all kinds of nasty metabolic diseases like diabetes and heart problems and whatnot. But if you do not overconsume and eat in moderation, you can eat as much sugar as you want as long as you get enough of the other micro and macronutrients. The sugar in itself is not the problem. The non-moderation is the problem. As soon as you leave the healthy interval in between good and bad, you have a problem. And this is more or less true for all types of foods or nutrients out there. If you eat more than a few kilograms of broccoli, you too have a problem. Broccoli can poison yourself if you eat too much. If you eat too much meat, you can also poison yourself. If you eat too much, I don't know, vitamin E, you can probably also poison yourself with it. The key is always moderation. There is an interval that is healthy, that is in between too much and too little. And you should always aim for this interval. Okay, let's now come to the summary. What have we learned today? First, for almost all behaviors and substances, there exists a too much and a too little, and an interval in between that is okay. You should always try to aim for the interval in between. And this is a difficult concept to teach in a society that is based on consumption and always wanting more. Pretty much everything in a capitalist society suggests to you that you can buy happiness, while in reality you can only buy pleasure, and pleasure is extremely fleeting. It leaves as soon as the sensory input that created it leaves. If your drug is gone, the pleasure is gone and it leaves you empty. And overconsumption of sensual pleasures is strongly incentivized in capitalist societies, and many people fall for the meme. It does not lead to happiness, it leads to short-term pleasure. And it is beneficial to practice moderation in, for example, eating and in any form of entertainment, because overindulging in it leads to addiction, and addiction always leads to unhappiness, because at some point you cannot supply more of the thing you need to make you what you think is happy, while in reality you are obviously just pleasured. And in reality, some enjoyments are obviously fine, while there is clearly a too much. If you watch 16 hours a day of Netflix, you do too much. If you watch 1 hour with your significant other, that's perfectly fine, since it has a positive effect on your life. Always aim for the interval in between and try to avoid the black and white thinking, as that is very likely wrong. I know of pretty much no example where there's a clear answer that is either black or white. Okay, and that's pretty much it for today. I hope you learned something. If you liked the content of this video, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you feel like I missed something, feel free to point out my errors in the comment section below, and maybe I will respond to it or change the video even. And until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.